Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Anthony Wheeler.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we've published somewhere around 75 children's books. I guess Jake's published some graphic novels too.
Gross.
And we've all worked at university teaching illustration.
Each week we tackle a subject related to illustration from three perspectives. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue. I've not heard a good argument lately, but every time you learn something new, but it's not brand spanking new. Because that's
maybe not today.
Today could be the day for a good argument.
Thanks for joining us today, Anthony.
I didn't have a choice. It was in my contract for what you guys pay me. So
Lee is, which I should clarify is none of us are getting paid for this podcast.
We could talk politics. That would be a good argument.
Yeah, we could. There's lots of politics to talk right now, regardless of where you live in this world. That's for sure. There's upheaval everywhere.
Today could be the end of 3-Point Perspective as you know it. And we could talk politics. We could do calisthenics. We could talk about why Jake needs a haircut really bad.
Yeah. We got into a little existentialism.
Yeah. And then we can talk, we can close the episode with bears, and we can talk about black bears.
Which I encountered a black bear in the woods a few nights ago at night. And I did not see it, but I heard it, and it absolutely terrified me. The noise that it made as it echoed through the woods, I was like, oh, this is why, our ancestors fought bears, because they're like, heck no,
and
that
lived
thing
to
out of
14
here.
years old. Yeah.
Right.
You could take a black bear, I think, Jake.
I think all of us think that we can take a black bear, but I think in reality, if any of us saw a black bear,
imagine
nose to nose,
imagine you've just finished a graphic novel or a children's book, and you've got all the original art there, and here comes the black bear, and he's going for it. There's no digital copies anywhere.
Yeah, I could take a black bear.
Then you could take a black bear.
I'd be throwing my kids at it. Get away.
Yeah.
No. I wanted to say that Lee could not join us today because he is on assignment. He's in Chicago at a watercolor workshop, and he's learning how to improve his watercolor skills as if there was room
he
for
needs
improvement.
that. God.
Right. No, he's taking good notes too, because we've been talking a lot about how do we do more live workshop events through SVS. And so he's been wanting to go to them, and he's been wanting to do them. So this is a part of his research for that as well.
Could have sent me on an assignment. That would have been cool.
Yeah, I know. We should send you off on location, do something
to Portugal just to get rid of me.
Yeah.
I wonder if Lee is trying to paint poorly so he doesn't out himself in the workshop.
Like, wait a minute. You're too good to be at this workshop. Today, I wanted to get into just what we've been working on and sort of the realities of being a working illustrator. We're not taking questions today. We're just going to chat as three professional illustrators, kind of like insider baseball type of discussion, possibly, and get into. Here we are at halfway through the year, how this year's going, how the rest of the year is projected to go. Do you guys even have yearly plans, or do you just kind of go with the flow? And so that's what we want to get into. But first, I want to talk about sort of what I've been doing for the last 2, maybe 3 years, maybe it's 2 years. I've been working on a book pitch for as a graphic novel proposal for publication, right? And I had my agent taking it around, and this particular proposal has gone through 20 iterations probably. And I do not recommend. Here's Uncle Jake's proposal advice moving forward. I'll say this. I'll cut to the end here. The spoiler alert is it's been rejected by every major publisher. Okay. Now here's my advice to you. Do not shoehorn your idea into what the publishers are wanting, because you're still not going to give them what they want, and your idea is going to be worse off for it. And that's essentially what I've been doing. Is I had an idea, we pitched it. The initial publisher that we pitched to said, you know what, this is really cool. Actually, two publishers said, this is really cool, we really like it, but it's lacking a sort of contemporary child character for which the youth to kind of identify with. And we don't publish books that don't have essentially a child protagonist. And so it was back to the drawing board. I was like, okay, let's figure out how to fit a child protagonist into this idea, right? And so what I had proposed was, you guys know Missile Mouse, my character. You guys know Skull Chaser and how I've been doing, robots and space bounty hunters, essentially my version of Star Wars, right? And it's what I keep returning to and keep going back to, and it's the comics I keep telling. And I thought, let's go big with this and try to publish it with the publisher. And the early notes I got back was, nope, needs to have a child protagonist. All right.
You would think a robot cat with booster jets would be just enough. Right?
Just enough, right?
Just enough.
Were you getting the same?
Not in this case.
Were you getting the same notes from multiple publishers?
Yeah. There's a lot. So essentially, what the different iterations were this. I went back and thought, okay, what's a cool character I could put in there? And I came up with a female, like this girl who's like a mechanic who's really into machines and whatnot. And the notes I got from that was, no. This is a boy book, so it has to be a boy protagonist. Sorry, we can't sell girl protagonists to boys. I was like, okay, I'll make it a boy. So I went back and I made a boy, and I had this really cool story idea, which I'm going to go back to, but it was like a complete overhaul. And my agent was like, no, you changed it too much. Just put that character in there. But the new idea I had, I really like, that it might turn out to be something I do, years down the line when I get around to it. And so then it was, figuring out how to fit this character in, how to make sure I was hitting all the marks, how to make sure the story was there, everything was there. And I put it together, and this last round, the responses were, oh, this is not the kind of book that we publish, or B, we already have a book like this that we're working on, and this would compete with that. So it's too similar to what
there's only room for one book.
Right,
now.
exactly.
Just one
Right.
per publisher.
So you wonder why I'm so drawn to self-publishing, because I will say this, there's merits to both worlds,
Sure.
right? And the merits to self-publishing are, you get to bypass all the gatekeepers saying no to your project, and you just go get to make it. And the only gatekeeper are your fans. And as long as you're providing an optimal entertainment experience to them, you're happy, they're happy, and you sell, a bunch of books. And I've had fairly good success doing that over the years. I would say every time I do a good self-published book launch, I can guarantee I'll sell more than 1,000 books, right, for that. And this last book, Robots, was no exception. And we can get into that Kickstarter and everything later. But the nice thing about going with traditional is, if you can get past the gatekeepers, and there's a lot of them. The first gatekeeper is your agent.
Yeah.
Make sure your agent's happy, because your agent's not going to want to sell something they don't believe in. So your agent has to believe in it. And the second person you have to get past is the editor that your agent's talking to. Your editor has to believe in it. That editor has to take it to essentially the publisher, and the publisher has to the publisher is there's the publisher lowercase and publisher capitalized. Lowercase is like publisher, like Scholastic. What I'm talking about, the person at Scholastic who publishes the graphic novels,
Yeah,
right?
like the head of
Right.
that division.
Right.
Yeah.
So that person has to believe in it, and then they have to take it to essentially the people with the purse strings, right? Who know how much money they can devote to certain projects and say, hey, this project I really believe in, and I think if we invest $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 in it, you know, however much it costs to pay the creators, pay for printing, pay for marketing, all that stuff, that I think we could get a 10x on our return. And then they all look at it and say, no.
Right.
Essentially, they're the next group of gatekeepers that you have to convince. And then once you pass through all that, then it's you're still competing with every other book that they've said yes to, right?
Right.
But if you can get past all of that, like I've had a phenomenal success with my Miss Mouse graphic novels, right? Like those books have sold combined, two of them, over 150,000 copies, which would absolutely not be possible had I self-published.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, not at all. No, because
So-
there's just no distribution
Right.
past your initial audience, unless you
Mhm.
really are super good at sales and distribution on your own.
You know,
No,
the-
not to interrupt. I think what's wild about, I mean, because we've talked about this over the years, you know, so my daughter, who, when she started reading Missile Mouse was 10, she read both Missile Mouse books 10 times a piece.
Yeah.
And then the sneak preview of the comic or the book version of what you pitched. And as at that point, an 11-year-old girl lost her mind over it. And so
Yeah.
it's funny to me how, and I know the big publishers, you know, have to dial things down, and they can't leave slop into their business because margins are tight.
Mhm.
There's a lot of pressure and constraints and publicly traded companies and all that sort of stuff. It is just funny to me though that that somebody outside of the target demographic that they wanted you to target couldn't love it more.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
and that's the part that baffles me a little bit. And that's where you wonder, like, how come the sales and the marketing departments can't have enough wherewithal to say, no, we can market this. Like, we're good at our jobs because we know how to sell books and market books. And we know how to talk to the distributors for Barnes and Noble and Amazon and all these other places. We're good at this. It's yeah.
The frustrating thing too is that you're talking about an industry that has a 10 or 20% hit rate.
Yeah.
Right? They're not batting 500.
Mhm.
They're running off of 10% of their books, paying for all the 90% of losers, but they're telling you how to make your book not a loser.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
You know, Will, I never asked you this. When you started working on your pickleball project, which is gorgeous, I can't remember. Did you take that around to traditional, or did you just know that you wanted to self-publish it?
I figured that it was just too small of a niche to even bother going to a traditional publisher.
But that was what, 5 years ago now?
No, it's only been 2 years.
Been a couple of years.
Yeah.
But it's been in development longer than that, hasn't it?
This
I'm
is
losing all track of
probably
time.
two
at
and a
my
half, probably
old
2.5
age.
years since I
Yeah.
started it. Yeah.
You know,
Do you
Um,
have any regrets not trying to get into mass distribution in the old traditional way that you're so familiar with, versus what you do today?
No, because I just can't imagine them. If they're okay, there's probably a publisher out there. There's probably 5 or 10 publishers that would have said, hey, this could be something. They're going to be tiny boutique publishers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe somewhere, somehow, but I didn't want to try to find that needle in the haystack. I wanted to just move forward. And I think I talked about this in our self-publishing class, that book, I'm like, if I rate my projects as, you know, a home run, or a failure or a base hit, you know, Pickleball Paul's kind of a base hit. It's money wise, like if I'm judging it on like how much money I'm making off of it,
Mhm.
I'm probably getting close to $15,000 positive on that project
Mhm.
now.
What about creatively? What's your hit ratio? Is it a grand slam for you?
It was super fun, yeah, because it's the community that I live in. This is a pickleball community. In fact, the oldest pickleball tournament is here in our resort. And so like it's got so much history, and there's so many people around here that they'll call me Pickleball Paul. So like we're driving around and, hey, it's Pickleball Paul,
Is that just because they can't remember your name?
Some of them, yeah, because they've like, we have friends of friends of friends who are like, hey, I heard that you have this book, and how can I get one? So it's been really fun in that sense to do something where the community that I live in really appreciates it. But
Did I hear that right? Your nickname is Pickleball Paul to them?
Some people call me that now.
Oh,
They can't remember my name, but they'll call me Pickleball Paul.
What about Willie McPickle?
I don't like that.
That's a different podcast, boys.
That comes with a different rating.
Can I ask you another question? If you were like 31 years old and you hadn't had all the success that you've had over the years, and had a lot of really cool projects come through, and a lot of accolades and name stuff, would you, with how much you love pickleball and how strongly you felt about that project or feel about that project, if you were earlier in your career, would you have desperately tried to find a big publisher to do that for you, or would you still felt comfortable without having the name recognition that you have today to then self-publish it?
That's a good question. I mean, I didn't sell those books because of my name, because the community that I sold them in didn't know me. We were so new that, if you've been following my YouTube channel, I had a whole series on how how that whole project kind of played out. But I have a guy who sells them for me, and he's out there right now selling them at tournaments. And that's the only reason why it's successful, really, is because I found him, and we found each other. So yeah, I the thing is, when I was in my 30s, I couldn't afford to do anything that didn't make money.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have had the money to do it on my own.
I was going to say, it's not an age thing. It's a financial runway problem.
Yeah. Early on in my career, I needed every job. I needed every dollar. We never had enough. We didn't have good finance. We weren't good at budgeting, and we spent more than we made. The Leyendecker credo. And that's been a big change for me, is really learning to sock money away so that I can do more projects. Because like, even the funny thing is, even the Kickstarter that I'm working on right now, the game that I'm working on, that we're starting our Facebook ads this week, and we'll be launching that Kickstarter in September, I think, or early October, September. But to do it right, you think of crowdfunding, and you're like, okay, well, you do crowdfunding because you don't have the money to just go directly to market, right? Mm-hmm. That's one reason. But the other reason is for the network effect of Kickstarter, right?
Right.
But you think, well, okay, so Kickstarter solves your financial problems, and it does in a lot of ways, but to do it right, like if you see, the big multi-six-figure Kickstarters, especially in the game realm,
mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of them are investing $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 before they ever launch the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
They get videos that are, like high-end.
Yeah, world class.
They're 3D animated videos,
And then throughout the Kickstarter, there 10% of what that Kickstarter is making is going back into ads.
That's right. And then you can do better. You can afford more ads if you already have money. So there's all sorts of things like that. So like I'll just segue into that a little bit. Mm-hmm. What I'm working on right now, with this game, it actually I got it almost done where I was doing the whole thing myself, and then I realized, like, I was really struggling with the Facebook ads side of it. It's just, I don't speak that language of digging into the guts of meta, and like it's so frustrating and confusing for me when things don't work. And I'm working with a marketing team, and and they're getting back to me and everything. And then up popped this guy who's actually one of our SVS students, who helped me he actually helped me with Pickleball Paul. His name's Anthony Wheeler.
Let's go. Get more credit than I deserve. Sorry.
It's Anthony Beneke. And anyway, he's like, hey, do you want any help or anything like that? And so I kind of reached out to him and said, hey, I'm wondering if you can kind of work as an assistant. Well, I mean, I didn't realize how good his graphic design skills are. That's his profession, right? So he wants to learn how to be an illustrator. That's why he's taking our classes, but he's already a very, successful working graphic designer. So yeah, I'm working with him and I'm paying him and cutting him in on the project. And he went through, like, I thought I had everything done really well on the box design. He went through everything, and he's like, well, I noticed you didn't have this, and I noticed that we could probably put that, and other games put this on there, and other games put that on there, and what was your reasoning for doing this and that? And I mean, like, it's night and day. And so that's really cool. And that goes back to where I've talked about, or we've talked about, collaborating before. And I think any young illustrator who might be hearing this, there are steps and stages in your career. The first one is you just want to get paid for, like, drawing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just want to sell your time and get paid for drawing something. And then maybe the next step is you make something that can sell while you're sleeping, so you make prints, or you make, a book or something that people can buy on your website, or you make brushes for Photoshop or whatever that you can sell, that someone can buy it while you're on vacation or where you're, and then to me, the next big step is actually having enough money to really start a big project where you're hiring other people to help bring it to life, and really trying to compete on a bigger stage. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. And my goal with this Kickstarter is to get well over 6 figures. And the reason for that is I have 2 more games that I want to do behind it,
Mm-hmm.
but I need to make enough money to justify the time, and also to make enough money to go ahead and start on the next one. I mean, like,
Right.
I'm looking for the kind of money I'm looking for now is investable money,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't want to just pay bills. I'm looking for big wins. So that's why I say with Pickleball Paul, it's probably around 15,000 now where I'm net positive.
Yeah.
And I'm making anywhere from $300 to $600 a month with this sales guy and there's no end in sight, really. I mean, like, he's just going to keep selling these books, but that's not, I'm looking for a lot more than that right now.
Would you, back to Pickleball Paul, would you ever consider, you've run through it, you either need to invest money to get more books or just call the project done? Would you then take it to one of those boutique publishers and say, hey, I'll make, I got 2 books here, I'll make a third. Let's ink a deal. And now you've got 3 books that you can add to your library.
I would, but I don't want to throw, how that saying where you throw good money after bad.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would be throwing good time after bad if to go searching for that. If that fell in my lap, that would be amazing.
Gotcha.
But I don't think that'll ever.
You're not
fall
going
in
to
my
search it out, but if someone comes to you,
Yeah.
you'd be like, yeah, let's do
The
this.
big thing
Have you had people give you the feedback that that pickleball is just too much of a small niche for that thing, or is that a self thing that you think?
I think what it is it's twofold. One, if I enjoyed sales, I could get the books sold a lot more. Like, I could get them into a lot of mom and pop bookstores. I could get them into more pickleball shops, because we sell wholesale to pickleball shops. But I hate that part of life. I don't want to be a salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
And so I could make more money doing that, but I'd rather invest my time in this next project in a game.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But
My
yeah,
book
but
idea, I've kind of taken a cue from you, is Cornhole Joe.
That was a good joke. Well done. Well done.
I think there's a lot of there's a lot of potential there, right?
How do you think your agent would feel about that? I mean, we would have to have a child protagonist and no robotic space cats.
hey, pickleball is a step above cornhole. Just saying.
I don't know, but you know what? We played all weekend or all week with this family reunion up in the mountains. Cornhole.
You're getting good.
So this is for the YouTube comments. What is a more prolific game today? Is it pickleball or is it cornhole? Like what's more popular? So this is the battle in the YouTube comments that we have to
which
make.
is getting more coverage on ESPN.
If you're in Europe, it would be padel. That's actually the fastest growing sport from what I understand.
What is padel?
It's a combination between tennis and racquetball. Have you ever seen it?
Is that the one where you can run outside?
Outside the court and hit it back in. It's amazing.
That is my TikTok feed. That I didn't know what the name of it was, but every time one of those videos comes up in my TikTok,
they play
I watch
with the tennis ball is flat. It's like 2 pounds flatter than a real tennis ball, and they play with wooden paddles. Hence padel.
That's such a European name, padel.
Yeah. But hey, the one last thing
over here in America, we're playing pickleball and cornhole.
one last thing on the pickleball, Paul, was the project. I think would have done really, really well if, and there was one thing that we were counting on that got nixed, and that was the biggest tournaments, the national tournaments that they have, the pro circuit tournaments, are being held all the time around the country, and they're big, huge venues. But there's one company called Pickleball Central who bought all the rights to be the only vendor at those, and they decided not to carry my book. So that we were planning on getting in those, and we thought for sure they'll want.
Why'd they say no? Do you know?
They don't really want to sell novelties. They want to sell like pickleball related stuff.
Yeah.
So there's no
Makes sense.
like, here's what's weird to me is like the vending at smaller tournaments is vibrant. You know, there's all kinds of stuff for people to buy. There's tons of people there, but there's such a smaller show than the big. I mean, there's, for instance, at the small ones that my guy goes to, there's maybe 300 to 500 people there. At the big ones, there's 2,000 to 4,000 people walking around. So the sales.
Can you pass out little postcards?
What about a guy in a trench coat? He opens it up.
Yeah,
and
there
it's
you
just
go.
Pickleball. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about a paddle or like a handle attachment to the book, so the book actually becomes a pickleball
paddle, kind of like Kramer's coffee table book that folds into a coffee table.
Exactly.
Okay,
I'm into that.
Great. You just pull out the handle, and it won't snap off because it's made of high carbon steel or something.
Right.
That seems like a cheap product to make. Good margins.
So you could read in between points.
Right.
So here's an interesting question. So Jake, going back to development of this project and how many iterations it went through, and then Will, with what you've learned by hedging on a bet that just didn't turn out. What would you do? I guess what would you do differently next time to make sure that you don't put yourself back in that position, either by not like locking down that distribution on a unique thing, or running with a project that you feel really good about, that an audience really likes already, and not having to listen to all these other people at the same time? Like, what do you do differently then?
Yeah. Go ahead, Will, and then
I'll just say I think there are some projects that you have to actually do and see how they turn out.
Yeah.
And I don't like that's the life of an entrepreneur, is you're going to have a win-loss ratio, and you just hope that you get a couple wins that just pay, buy the farm. And pickleball, Paul, doesn't look like it's going to be one of them. The good thing is I didn't lose any money. I'm making money, but
you only just lost time, right?
Yeah.
But if you're doing what you love, you're not losing that time.
Correct. I don't feel like I lost anything. So that's the good news on that. That's why I say that's a medium project. I've had failures for sure where I've lost a lot of time and money. And I probably have more failures than wins. But the failures you have to have those failures. to have wins, because you learn so many lessons from those failures, right? And so, I think that if you can get to a point where you can value your failures, not in the moment because the pain hurts really bad, but if you can get back on the horse and overcome it, you have successes down the road that are coming. And the cool thing is you don't know what's in your life next year, or the year after that, or the year after that. There are projects that you haven't done yet that you're going to look back on and go, where did that come from? That thing worked out amazingly well.
Yeah.
And it just sort of.
I have one of those that right now that we'll talk about later.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I guess to close the loop on my project, I think if you want to go the traditional publishing route, you do have to be a little bit more strategic than I was. And really what I was doing was taking something that I absolutely loved and was into, but it didn't have the overlap. It doesn't have the overlap with what the publishers absolutely love and are into. Yeah. And so a lot of people say, hey, follow your passion. What are you passionate about? Just go all in on that. That's kind of lousy advice if that's your ticket to your meal ticket, right? If it's just your hobby time, cool down Saturday afternoon project, absolutely go be passionate about it. But if it's, if you're essentially wanting to start a business, which every book that gets published is a piece of a business or a business in and of itself, you do have to be pretty strategic with it. So I think what I had there was something that's very compelling and very interesting, and I think it would be up someone's alley. It's for someone, right? That's the problem, is trying to figure out who that someone is. Is it for animation? Is it for book publishing? Is it for self-publishing? Is it for web, just digital web publishing, right? But like Will says, you kind of just have to do it and put it out there and see what the response is. And part of my exploring the next options, now that every publisher sort of said, we'll pass, but we love Jake, we love his ideas, so if he has any other ideas, let us know, right? What do I do now? My options are, and here's the problem with taking this idea to animation, just sidestepping publishing and saying, hey, let's see if this would be a good animation thing. The state of the industry in entertainment is absolutely topsy-turvy. If you've paid any attention to what's going on, there's this big shakeup of all these older, established entertainment companies with the new streaming tech companies, right? And everybody's for the last 10 years, everybody's been trying to figure out how to make this new technology and entertainment sort of seamlessly work together. And so Netflix's whole idea was the parents pay the money for the streaming. They're all watching cable or network television. However, what if we put all this money into animation and get kids really excited about it and advertise to the kids? The kids are going to beg mom and dad for a Netflix subscription. Yeah. They're going to get it. After the kids go to bed, they're going to be like, what is this Netflix thing? I'm talking 10 years ago, right? 5 years ago, whatever. What is this Netflix thing? They're going to see, they have all of these cool shows that are aimed towards me. Well, we can't unsubscribe because I kind of want to finish watching whatever XYZ that I want to watch. What's that Korean killing game show?
Squid Game.
Squid
Game, right? Squid Game. And if you go to Apple Plus has their show that everybody watches. Was it the soccer game guy, the soccer coach guy?
You don't watch a lot of television.
No, Jake. I don't. And then there's the dragon show on HBO Max or whatever.
Henry Puffle Dragon. Yeah, that one.
No, whatever. Yeah, the dragon show. And then Amazon has Jack Reacher or something like that. I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah, I do not watch streaming. That is not my jam. My jam is I watched an hour-long technical overview of the SR-71 Blackbird, and I just devoured that. I was like, this is so cool. And I was looking it was like essentially animated cross sections. Like, here's what this dial does. This one particular dial, you know, it's got 100 dials. This dial does this, and it reacts to this. I loved it. Right.
Imagine you at a party.
Imagine me.
Yeah.
Hey, hey guys, did you hear about this 50-year-old spy plane that may be decommissioned? Maybe they're still using it. Let me tell you what. No, but that brings to my point is that all of these streamers. So because now all the parents are into it, they don't need to make kids content anymore because essentially they're at capacity. Everybody who's going to essentially sign up for streaming has signed up for streaming, and either is paying their bill or they're not into it like me. And they're not competing against each other anymore. They're all licensing their shows back and forth to each other. Like there was a show on HBO that's now on Netflix, and there's a show on Netflix that's now over on Apple Plus or whatever, right?
Yep.
So their whole competition is with YouTube and hour-long video, breakdowns of the SR-71 and any sort of social media thing, right?
Yeah, TikTok, yeah.
And so that's who they're competing with. And so so there was this heyday where I could have taken this to Netflix and said, hey, I've got a really cool idea for a kid's show, and there would be money there and there would be resources, but those days are sort of over. And if I want to go anywhere with this idea now, essentially if animation wants to, or if entertainment wants to be into it, they need to see that it is already a success on its own. Mm-hmm. And so that is it a 6-figure Kickstarter, which it wasn't, or it could be, I don't know. If we're including spaceships and robots, those two books, which are all in the same universe as Missile Mouse and Skull Chaser and everything, if it's, all encompassing, I don't know if Kickstarter, it would have to be like a $500,000 Kickstarter for even anybody in entertainment to be like, oh, this might be a good investment opportunity. Or it would have to have, I don't know, a substantial amount of downloads on like a Tapas or a Webtoons type of thing, where they could say, oh, there is really, the people have spoken and said they love this thing. Let's take it to the next level, because you do see some of those things going into publishing and doing really well. I see those books on Target, where they started out on Webtoons. And
have you noticed that the Target kidlit but also middle grade section has grown vastly in this last year? They're prioritizing it. Yeah. Do you think that all the struggles that you had on that project that ultimately got rejected, did that? And I know that took a lot of time, but did that help you get any of the recent stuff that you've gotten? Like the extra eyeballs and stuff. So even though you fell short on that thing,
did
you're
that right.
Help you?
I did. Yeah. I am working. So I did get a book deal with the publisher, working on one of their already established IPs, right? And that, I don't know. Maybe possibly me pitching my own stuff kind of put me top of mind. Like, oh, Jake's a guy who's still around, who's still doing stuff, who's still living and breathing and kicking and screaming, and maybe
not based on the ankles that we saw you exercising earlier.
If I'm gonna live another 40 years, some of that has to be my own doing too, right? Yeah. So yeah, I don't. It's not time wasted. I don't see it time wasted, because it did help me solidify some things. I did write out a cool story with a child protagonist that I like. I like that character now. At first, I was like coming up with some kid out of nothing. I'm like, I'm just gonna slap you in here. You're this like well, I don't want to just an afterthought. And now I'm like, what is this? Where is this kid gonna go? What is this kid gonna do? He's just, and really one of my big takeaways from this whole thing is, if you want to pitch to animation or to publishing or anything, you have to come at it with, essentially, someone has to get it if they saw it on a billboard. They have to understand what it is,
Mm.
just
Quickly.
a billboard. And what I pitched was a little too obtuse and complicated that it had to be explained. And nobody has time to have things explained because the marketing department doesn't want to explain. They just want to say, hey, look. And I give a couple examples. Dog Man. You have a picture of a man with a dog's head, and it's super cartoony and silly. Kids get that immediately. You absolutely can understand that whole thing from a billboard. Like,
Same thing with Missile Mouse, though. Doesn't that blow you mind that Missile Mouse still, after all the success it had all those years ago, and it's so easy to look at, the silhouette is perfect, it just all works, that
Yeah.
they still can't even necessarily get that sometimes?
yeah. Yep. But even if you go to like Raina's stuff, like Smile, and I know that's a 10, 15-year-old book, but she essentially established a look for all the books after that, where it's one word, you have one image, and you get it right away what this book's going to be about,
Yep.
And so moving forward, if I have another idea that I want to pitch, and I do have a handful of ideas, and that's another takeaway for any young 20, 30 something, 40, however old you are trying to pitch something, you don't have one idea. You have 20 ideas.
Yeah.
Really. But if I do want to pitch another one of these ideas, I need to really do some sitting down and thinking like, okay, what is the billboard sign for this that everybody gets it instantly?
Yeah. Yep.
So Anthony, what are you working on?
Yeah, you've been interviewing us. Now it's time for us to interview you.
You can tell that I used to be a recruiter back in the day before I plunged
Right.
my family into poverty. Yeah, so it's been a really interesting, I'm just going to call it a year. So, I still do my daily live stream over on Twitch every Friday, and now it's on Mondays as well. We do the live stream version of my Chaotic Draw Along, which is a interactive draw along event between me and a lot of people. We're getting to that point where kind of consistently we have, an upwards of 100 plus people submitting artwork every single Friday and Monday based on the weird prompts that the audience chooses. And then last year, we ran, for me, not to the level of you guys, but we ran a super successful Kickstarter campaign for the card game version of it. That really cool. It was a brand new category for us. We'd never broken into games before. Wow. And we funded that in 83 minutes. So I think my funding goal was 9,000. We funded it really fast. My live stream audience really understood it. No one else really understood it because I didn't do a very good job bringing what I do on the daily live stream over to the rest of my social media. And I also had to make a choice of like, do I focus on social media, like TikTok, Instagram, and all that? Or do I focus on sort of my live stream family, which is really important to me, and it fills me up with like good stuff and good vibes, and also helps pay my bills. And I chose the live stream, and I think the project funded. We executed on it after I was done paying everybody and everything. There was very little profit left over, but it did lead me to working on an engagement with a sales, marketing, strategy, execution, distribution firm, which I work with today, and they're awesome. And we got our website up. And in the first couple of months, I mean, we have had incredible sales, and we packed on a lot of customers. And some days I'm almost like, where do people even find this thing? So the distribution of that as an independent, the box of prompt cards and the game version has done really well, and we have been in the profit, for months now, basically, which is really cool. And then as things kind of continue, so just in the Chaotic Draw Along prompt card family, we have a deluxe version that we're working on, which is a part 2 of this. And then we have other decks that will fold into it. So we have a fantasy deck, a monsters deck, which I cannot wait for. We have a kids version for sort of that early, like 4 to 7, as you get up into first and maybe into second grade. And all of the decks, if we do it smartly, will fold into each other. And so you can use the cards interchangeably. And so over time, if you think about when we collected baseball cards as kids, we had those long boxes,
Yeah.
and you could slot everything in, and you could have your favorites. That's
Mhm.
ultimately what this project will then really do. And we're working on distribution. Our team is working on, and the game plan is much more towards the middle of next year, is working on physical distribution into the Barnes and Noble and then the UK equivalent, and really marketing this out to chains and things like that. I wanted to solidify just my independent distribution of it first. Plus, two, it's more money for me. I don't have to give more money to other people, and I need to make money for my family. We have workbooks, we have coloring books, we have lots of other stuff coming along with this kind of thing, which is cool. And I think for me, this will be the biggest chunk of my business, and will probably be the thing that will put my kids through college, but it's not going to do that for a couple of years. And so
Mhm.
I'm really excited about the future of this, and I think our audience really understands it now. And every time I post about it on Instagram, and which I try to do sparingly because I don't want to just feel like I'm a hack. And but I mean, we will get 4 or 5 orders a day when I post about this,
Yeah.
and that's, I know that doesn't sound like a lot to some people out there, but I don't necessarily need to be the biggest success on the planet. With
Right.
success comes stress, and I'm stressed out enough.
Mhm.
The other big thing that I'm working on right now, so we have this kind of overall thing called the super awesome verse, and then there's these little downlines that come from that. And so the chaotic draw along is one of the downlines. Our super awesome products like my sketchbooks and stuff like that is another line.
Mhm.
And then there's kind of anything that's Anthony Wheeler art related, like just my BS degenerate artwork that I make. And so right now today, what I'm stressed out about is making my second art book. And the first art book came out 5 years ago. It was 96 pages. We sold 1,200 of those.
Mhm.
We did a Kickstarter, again, humble. I mean, we funded within a day, but we maybe had 200 backers on it. 5 years later, the project, it's the same size as this, but it's now 144 pages. And I'm much more intentional with the material that's going inside of it. Before, it was just sort of like, I made a book.
Is there any reason it's 144 pages?
Because that was the. I mean, I could put in upwards of 1,000 pages in it. You always have to, when you make books like this, to be smart so you don't lose pages, because this is a
Mhm.
4-color offset book. So there's these massive sheets that they cut and fold and do ninja moves with. And we got just a really good price breakdown from 96 to 144 was minimal cost.
Yeah.
But I can increase my cost or increase my price, and then I can put more value into it. And I think the first book is just me stating to the universe that I exist. This
Mhm.
next book is all about, again, with the same weird degenerate stuff that I make, is all about imagination, creativity, where ideas come from, how my childhood influences the artwork that I make today. And there's much deeper conversations on the inside of it. And so I think it's a cool artifact of my art, but I think it's going to be a much more important thing for the up and comer who can read it and start to help them solidify where their imagination can come from, or why daydreaming is super important, or why boredom and tinkering is
Mhm.
just a vital part of the creative process. And those are things I just didn't know to talk about 5 years ago.
Right.
So we're working on doing a Kickstarter for it at the end of the month. This sounds like a sales pitch. It's not meant to be that.
Well, let me.
But,
I want to just interject something right
yeah,
there. I've done a bunch of art books,
yeah,
and book 3, I was like, I got to do something to up the the ante here to make it more enticing to people. And so I said, let's just add another signature to the printing. And the
yeah,
signature is 16 pages, right?
yep,
And so it went from 128 to 142, I think.
yeah, or 44. Yeah, yep,
44,
yep.
something like that. Math, whatever. Guess what? Nobody cared.
Yeah,
Nobody cared.
yeah,
And it was more pages. And it actually cost more to ship because it's a little bit heavier.
yeah.
So that's why I'm like, you
yeah.
don't have to do as big as and as bold as you think you have to, unless you really want to.
Yeah, and I've thought a lot about that, because I think the easier way is just to do what I did. It worked. We sold 1,200 copies. For me, that's a really good success.
Huge. Yeah.
I wanted more room. I personally wanted more room. I also felt like I could up my cover price a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, I did the big thing that I have to sacrifice in this one is I have to print it in China versus printing in Colorado where I live. That's just it's a thing that I have
Yeah.
to do. But I couldn't afford to print a 96-page book here in
Mhm.
Colorado anymore.
It's still blasted expensive.
It's triple what it used to be, and so I don't. There's issues with it, but
I
those are just choices that you make.
I asked
Um,
my printer because I just fulfilled, or I'm getting my like bookmarks and everything done,
yeah,
and I use a printer here in Phoenix. And I was like, hey, can I just get a quote, see where we're at? And he came back, and I was getting less amounts printed, but it was almost the same price as last time.
yeah,
And I was like, what's going on here? Can I just ask why this costs, like why the this disparity between prices? And he's like, paper never went down in
never,
price after COVID and inflation. We just have to charge more in order to keep our
Mhm.
lights on.
yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, fine.
Yeah. I've chosen, based on inflation, I've chosen not to raise the price on my sketchbooks, and I'm choosing not to raise the price on the prompt cards.
Mhm.
I don't make as much profit, but I also recognize that my audience is a lot of college kids, a lot of up and comers, a lot of families. And so I'm willing not to eke out every ounce of profit I can
Yeah.
to hopefully have a more holistic sort of family approach to everything.
Mhm.
I think with this new book, the cover price will be raised a little bit. We'll probably go from 25 to potentially 35. I'm
Uh-huh.
not sure, maybe 30. We'll have to see. I don't know. But I know that there's enough value in there. And I also know that my audience is it's much larger than it used to be. And I think people really understand much more of who I am. But I'm really intentional too about the kind of storytelling that I do on social media and stuff now.
Mhm.
But and I know Will's going through this right now, and Jake just went through it. The hardest part about where I'm at right now is I hired a designer. He's phenomenal. I paid a really good rate to get a book perfectly made. Because the other
Mhm.
one, my friend Pablo and I worked on, and it's awesome, but it's not what we're able to do now based on time and kids and money and
Mhm.
Pablo's time. Pablo's the best designer on the planet. Um, and now it's making sure that we have all of the ads in place so we can really tell people more about this aspect of what the content inside of it's going to be. So it's making sure that the ads are done, that all of the tiers are really tightly processed for the Kickstarter, so I'm not going to
Mhm.
lose money, that there's no wiggle room in anything. I personally prefer to get everything done on my projects before I kickstart them. I want to really um, I just want a really quick distribution time. I don't want things to go out very long. So for me, this next kind of 20 days is like the stress of making sure that all of that is done as much as I can. So I feel really confident about launching and
Mhm.
telling the story and then getting those books back pretty fast. I also like to put my own money down ahead of time to pay for the printing and stuff. Like I hedge that bet, sort of like
Mm.
when Will was talking about sort of like putting that bet on, that the organizer of the pickleball tournaments taking him in.
Mhm.
And for me, I'm going to hedge that bet a little bit, and I'll put my own money in. That's another thing that entrepreneurs are sometimes scared to do. But if I put my own money in, I can get things produced faster. I can fulfill quicker, and then I can earn more trust and respect. And then I can also give weekly updates and really good weekly updates. And then the hope is that I can continue to bring more people in and keep those as lifelong fans because we got it together. So.
Mm.
But it's
So,
stressful. Like my team. I was on with my team earlier, right before I got on this, and not only were we talking about the Kickstarter, but we were talking about all the stuff that we have to do for like our Halloween plans, our Christmas plans. We're looking to get Amazon and Walmart.com distribution or sales channels for the Chaotic Draw Along. We're talking about how do we choose what products are going to go on shirts, and are we going to screen print those shirts, or are we going to just print on demand? And what that distributor is going to be like. And my team is in the UK and Serbia and all these other places. I think you guys know, and it's like we could do distribution from there, but tariffs and taxes and shipping.
Mhm.
And some days it's not for the faint of heart. And that's the stuff that people don't really tell you when you start your own small business, is just to think through all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So
Mhm.
so you said you're not going to raise your prices now because you're worried about your consumer having enough money, but
Mhm.
does that mean you were overcharging before?
Well, that's a great question. So, I don't necessarily. I think I was charging. So on my sketch, okay. So here's a great example. So on my sketchbook, my first sketchbook that I did, we've sold a couple thousand units of that, and again, it's humble. It pays my mortgage. We would sell one for 20, and then we would do two for 30.
Mm-hmm.
We did an upgraded product of that, a more deluxe premium version of that, and that was one for 25 or two for 40. I feel without massive distribution in other places, it's a really competent product for a competent price. But I recognize too that people can go get a Moleskine sketchbook for cheaper. And the question is always, would you rather give a huge company your money, or would you rather give a guy whose children will probably pop through there asking for lunch here in about 10 minutes? And I can win a lot of customers like
The
that.
big company.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I pick.
Yeah, you would, because you're a monster.
Well,
Welcome to 1 Point
honestly, I
Perspective.
do buy Moleskine, so I guess that is my choice.
I know, but they're awesome, right? I don't need to compete with those guys.
Right.
I just need to make competent stuff for my audience, and hopefully, and again, I've talked with my people. Hopefully, at some point, I can sort of fold away a little bit. Everything that we sell today is based on my name, and which is good or bad. And if we do a good enough job with our branding and our products, maybe at some point I can sort of fold away like Homer Simpson into the bushes.
Mhm.
And the names themselves of the brands, the Chaotic Draw Along, the Super Awesome Sketchbooks, and all that sort of stuff, maybe that can do the job on its own.
That's I think the important thing there. That's like really good foresight, because to brand your stuff as not the Anthony Wheeler sketchbook, but the Super Awesome Sketchbook, and not to
Yeah.
brand it as the Anthony Wheeler drawing game, but as the Chaotic Draw Along. Really smart stuff.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It's
'Cause-
important. Yeah, it's important to me that it's my fingerprints are all over it. But what happens if I want to give it to my oldest son and he wants to run it? Or what happens if we bring in a really incredible team and we're able to make the Cards Against Humanity version of the draw along, and it's in every retail in the
Mhm.
world? No one cares about me. Like, I care about
Right.
me. Will
Unless you're
cares
Paul
about me.
Newman, no one cares.
Unless you're who?
Paul Newman. Remember his
Oh yeah, with
his
the
salad dressing?
But he also gave all of his money to charity.
Yeah,
My charity
did.
is my 3 children.
Right.
They get to
Right.
buy
Making money off
buy
that.
my
Well,
products.
you can do that once you've had like 10 blockbuster films that you're like, you're an icon known around the world.
Yeah,
And
I
you
can't
can
even
start a
get
business for
20,000
charity.
views on my Instagram videos anymore.
Right.
So I don't think I'm going to have a blockbuster or anything.
Let me make a case for. I'll try to do this.
You can give me some really direct feedback.
No,
I'll
no,
take
no,
it.
no, no, not for you. Just
Oh,
in general.
okay.
Like, let me make a case for making as much money as you possibly can on your projects. Okay. 'Cause
Okay.
my
let's hear it.
radar perked up when you said you don't want to charge more, and whereas yeah, we're trying to balance things. We don't want to price our goods to a point where we look ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like we don't want to look like why is he charging 3 times what everyone else is charging, or even double what everyone else is charging. But my feeling is I have a lot of friends who are nearing retirement age or who are already retired, and I notice they have pensions, a lot of them.
Mhm.
If they don't have pensions, they have 401ks. If they don't have 401ks, they still also, if they have one or two of those, they also have like a health plan in retirement from the company they worked at, right? And as artists, freelance artists working on our own, what we have to give ourselves whatever we can get, right?
Mhm.
I mean, like if you we don't have a 401k matching program, for instance,
Mm-mm.
right? We don't have a pension, and so I look at it as and this really kind of started more like 10 years ago when I was like, I'm going to be retirement age in 15, 20 years. And I don't have this all figured out. Like, and this was really like 15 years ago. I was like, I'm going to be in trouble if I don't really start saving a lot of money. So that's become my motivation, is to save enough money. And there's different calculators and metrics out there on how much you actually need to have in your investment portfolio to be able to, retire relatively, retire poorly, retire moderately, or retire luxuriously. I'm looking for retirement, period. Like,
Mhm.
and not that I really want to retire, because I'll always do projects like this, but there is a certain,
At some point, you won't be physically able to.
let me just go back to 20 years ago. Was it 20 years ago? No, it was like 2008. What is that? That's like 15 years ago, something like that.
Hmm.
I was losing my home, right? In
Yeah.
the GFC, the Great Financial Crash. And we were overextended on our bills. I made a whole YouTube video on this, by the way. My wife lost her job because she got sick. And so we lost her teaching salary, and it was all on me. And then we were going through this recession in the country, and we couldn't make our mortgage payment. So I
Mhm.
lost my house, right? And I thought, I would go for a walk every day, and the stress level to get notices on your house saying that you have to vacate, or like your house is being foreclosed
How,
on.
how many months without paying the mortgage before that started happening?
Luckily, because so many people were going through it, we actually lasted in that house for almost 3 years.
Wow.
It actually worked out as a benefit, because the bank was begging us not to move out, because at that time, if we moved out, squatters would move in and destroy it, or contractors would go in there and steal everything, just rip sinks and stuff out they could put in the homes they were working on.
Yeah.
And so they kept saying, well, you're not moving out, right? No. But anyway, the stress of, for me, losing that house, and I had my truck repossessed, was immense. I mean, it was so bad. I never wanted to ever go through that again. So
Mhm.
long story short, when we ended up, I saved and I saved and I scrimped, and I told my family, we can't do this, we can't do that. We're not going on any vacations. We're not spending money on this. If you kids want, that my kids were teenagers, if you want something for school, if you want something at all, you're gonna have to earn it yourself. You're gonna have to do a paper route, whatever. We're saving up for a house again. And we scrimped and saved, and we're able to buy another home,
Mhm.
and rode the market up.
You
And in
bought a
that
home
same
at a good time too.
bought a home at a good time, and then rode the market up. And then I've been like saving as much money as I can on every project for the last 10, 15 years, to a point now where I could actually retire right now, poorly, very poorly, but we
Mhm.
could retire right now. We wouldn't be
Mac
able
and
to do much.
cheese retirement.
What's that?
Mac and cheese retirement.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
seems a
like,
little too highfalutin. Probably like the 99-cent ramen
Okay.
packet. Yeah.
but my thing is, I
Just
want
the
to make as
Mac,
much
no
money as I
cheese.
can, because I want to be able to save more money so that I can protect our future. And I don't feel bad about, charging what I think something's worth. And I'm not saying
Yeah,
you
that's fair.
do, but I think that, like, there are always going to be people that can't afford the things that we do, and there's people that can afford what we do.
Yeah.
And there's people that can easily afford what we do. And I'm going into this Kickstarter feeling like it's not going to perform as well as it would have if I had launched it a year or two ago, because I feel like our economy is suffering more now
Yeah.
than it
Mhm.
was a year or two ago. And that's just a reality that we all are dealing with, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you should launch after the election.
Oh yeah. Just wait for the stability of that. I think I really appreciate that sort of oh gosh, your perspective on it. Um, I mean, I've heard that story before, and I've heard it from you personally, and then I've obviously watched your, some of your YouTube videos and stuff on it. Um, I don't have a grand response other than I hope that in the stuff that I make, that I'm able to balance out stuff that I know that is going to be a value add or a value price for portions of the audience, and other stuff maximize our profits. Like, I'm not scared to talk about money. Like, I feel like money, and we've all three of us have had this conversation. Like, I think there's so many people who are really terrified to discuss money in a public space. I'm not scared of it. It's a tool for me. Some
Yeah.
years we have an excess, some years we have not an excess.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of artists are really scared of the topic in general. And I
Yeah.
think I think what I'll feel the best about is having a really good balance of products and services that are really that are priced well, and in some places priced more to the advantage of me. And then, just like what you said, though, is just saving as much of the money as I can, and noodling that stuff away to be able to save for the future, especially for my kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have a really good perspective about it, though. I mean, just in terms of investing and thinking about currencies and how people don't value themselves. I think that's a huge takeaway, is that people just have to continue to not only understand what their worth is in terms of their creativity, but also what that worth can then do for them in terms of being able to hire people, or to save for your family, or, perhaps buy a boat,
Yeah.
There's all value there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The other day, me and some friends were talking, and we were talking about, what would you do if you somehow, $100 million or $1 billion dropped in your lap, like ridiculous, fantasy money, right? And so, one friend was like, he's like, "Oh, I'm out. I'm done with cell phones. I'm done with trying to be a part of any sort of society, and I'm just gonna go into my studio and work on my comic, and I will happily meet up with you guys whenever we want, and do things, but it's just gonna be me and my comics." And another friend was like, I would probably pump, some of that money into this business that I'm working on, and really try to grow that and whatnot. And I have been sort of caching these business ideas that I want to do for the day that I get $1 billion, with the goal that the money will be all spent by the time I die, and put into these businesses that I think are all designed more for the betterment of the art community than they are for the betterment of Jake.
Oh, so this isn't the car repo business that you were pitching to
No,
us
not
earlier
that.
before the podcast. Okay,
And not
that's
the palm tree trimming business either.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if anybody's looking for a great business idea and is not willing, or is not afraid of getting sweaty, you can come to Arizona and trim palm trees all summer, and you will get paid. You'll make more money today than I made today if you're my palm tree guy.
And it's not even 11 o'clock for you yet. So yeah, that's the wild part.
For real. Do you want to hear my business ideas?
Yeah.
My fantasy business ideas. You ready? Okay, business number one, and maybe we'll just close with this unless there's anything else you guys want to
Take us
talk
out
about
with it.
Okay. Business number one, a publishing company, obviously. And this is a company where I would pay all my friends to make the projects that they couldn't get a publisher to agree to.
Yeah.
And I'd just be like, hey, let's do it. Let's go out there and we'll publish it, and we'll print as many as are needed for the amount of people who want them. So
Can I be on that
and I
list
would pay
of
these
friends?
people handsomely.
Imagine though, Jake gets so popular, he has to reject the story about the 4 intergalactic bounty hunter characters that don't have a child POV.
I'm like, listen, guys, we're running a business here. We've got a building in Manhattan to pay a mortgage on, whatever.
So would there be a vetting process on that? Like in other words, what if a friend who really is just beginning and doesn't have the chops, what if they approach you and they're like, I got this book idea, but
I probably do. I'll pay you per page. You know, you give me 10 pages, I'll pay you, you know, what, $2,000, $200 a page or $400 a page. We come with a page rate for that guy. If it's another friend who I know can deliver, and they're like, listen, I need a year to really like do this thing, I'd be like, how much do you need for the year to pay all your bills? And they'd give me that amount, and I would hand that over to them.
So you're going to throw money away is what you're saying. Because in my scenario, you look at it and you're like, it's not ready for prime time. It's not going to sell. But you would invest them anyway.
I'm investing in people, not in projects.
Okay.
That's the purpose of this publishing company. It's to invest in people, not projects. And all of these companies are more investments in people and communities than they are in any sort of particular
So do you
project.
turn anyone away?
What?
Do you turn anyone away?
If you're not my friend, you can't you don't have access. You got to be my friend first.
Just imagine the amount of DMs you're going to get right after this. Be like, just
Buddy,
in the hypothetical
Jake.
case that you do get $1 billion, like, hey, Jake, I also like black bears. And yeah.
So you really are. We'll say this: if we have interacted at all over the years, and we do have a relationship, you know, so it doesn't have to be necessarily a friendship, but it could be a relationship.
So Anthony, you and I are covered. You don't have to worry.
Well, not Lee. Get wrecked, buddy. See you later.
All right, business number 2. This is very small, short business. It's a one project business, but I would invest in a stop motion movie project headed by Mike Mignola, or any sort of Mike Mignola idea that he wants to do. Go find a director, go find a studio to do it, but I'd front the money for that.
Okay, so he gets to do what he wants, but if you could have like any media that you've consumed over your life, you know, not something that you're thinking of right now, like from your, what would it be? Like you talked that one day about like a stop motion Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like in that vein, what would a cool side project be for that?
So here's a little Mike Mignola Hellboy rant?
Yeah.
Remember you talked about this or on Twitter? So whoever owns the IP for Hellboy to do the movies, right? They really only have one job and one job only. And they've screwed it up 4 times now. Not make a Hellboy movie. Don't make a Hellboy movie. It's absolutely fine as it is as a comic. Leave it as that. It's a perfect piece of entertainment as a comic. It works so well with that. Why does it have to be a movie? Why does anything have to be a movie? If you have a movie idea, go make a movie. But if it's a comic, let it be a comic. If it's a novel, let it be a novel. All right.
Popular Ideas by Jake Parker.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
So
what's funny is hearing you be critical, because here's the Jake Parker method. You ready for this?
Yeah.
A movie comes out.
Here's the argue.
A movie comes out, and it's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And Jake has to love it for the first 2 weeks to a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then he can be critical of it maybe 2 or 3 months down the road.
Yeah. Especially if it's Star Wars.
You need to start putting those more critical 3-month reviews in the letterbox so we can follow along with that. Yeah.
I do. But that got me thinking, well, if there was going to be a Mike Mignola movie or a Hellboy movie, a stop motion would work really well with his style, because the pages are so artistically done and so compositional. Yeah. And you look at what Leica has been making over the years, and that's just beautifully. They'd be so done so well together. So I would say, Mike Mignola, let's meet and let's talk, and I'll put together the people, and let's make whatever movie you want to make. And it could be a Hellboy thing, it could be a Screw-On Head, it could be his new Curious Objects, but I think stop motion is the medium, the movie medium for that guy's work, not live action.
Yep.
Not animation either. I think it has to be stop motion. Okay.
Don't you worry, Jake, though, that a big pile of money landing in your lap might be kind of a creativity killer in some ways, in that, in that part of why we hunt is because we want to eat. And if all the food is just dumped on your lap, you think that the hunger to hunt will still be
Yeah,
there?
which is why I'll probably not get this lump sum in my lap to go ruin other people's lives with giving them money. I know. Okay, here's business idea 3. I've got 6. Okay. Are you guys enjoying this? Because
I'm loving it. I think
Okay.
the audience is loving it too.
Okay, business idea 3. A movie theater / reception hall. Okay, and so whenever we're not doing weddings or a grandma's and grandpa's 50th anniversary dinner, I'm showing like classic movies at this big hall, right? And it's got like couches and beanbags, and maybe there's tables you could get French fries served to you, like monster fries or something served to you while you're watching a movie. But it'd be films, by directors like Ford or Kurosawa or David Lean. Those like really cool cool movies, because they really are special and magnificent. And I've been watching more and more of them over the last couple of years. That's why I don't do streaming, because there's so many good movies to watch.
Yeah.
And every time I sit down to watch a streaming show, I'm like, we're an hour into this show and we haven't gone anywhere.
I know.
Nothing has happened.
That's
And
so
you
many
watch
of
a
them.
90-minute movie made in the 50s, and in the first 10 minutes you're farther along in character development, in setting, in environment, in situation, all that stuff. So
that's why I've watched North by Northwest like every couple of months for the last 3 years. Like, it's just too good.
Yeah, too good.
Yeah.
Okay, business idea 4. I want to open an art book / comic library. And this is something that you would have to actually pay to be a part of. It'd be an annual fee. And for that, you get a library card. And that gets you access to the entire library. You could check out any book you want, take it home. Maybe we could do like an old school Netflix model where we'd mail it to you. Then you'd have to mail it back when you're done. It'd come with a package. And that annual would pay for the new books that we would add to the library. And your library card would also give you voting rights on what books to put into the library. Okay.
Where does AI fit in that? You haven't mentioned AI yet.
That's actually so here's the crazy thing with AI. I saw someone post a picture of baby eagles.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And it was AI. And everybody's like, oh, baby eagles are so cute. They're so cute. A baby eagle looks like
a bald eagle
without feathers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's ugly.
They're literally bald. Right. And these baby eagles were like an adult-sized, American eagle with
tiny,
but just tiny with big eyes, right? And it totally fooled people. And they're like, "Oh, I had no idea they were so cute." And what I realized was how important it is to invest in pre-2024 media, physical media that hasn't been touched by AI, just so you know what's real and what isn't. Because so much that's going to be created from here on out is going to be infected with AI generated pap, right?
Yeah.
So that's the reason for this art book library. Is I think more and more people are going to want to participate in and be a part of something physical and real, and something that has history, and something that's genuine. And I would love to be able to provide that. Okay, business number 5, an art retreat, a series of art retreat vacation homes all around the world. And an annual membership to that would get you access to these places 1 week or a 1 month at a time. And you could just book it, and that's where you go to work on your projects. They're all set up for you to work on. You don't have to bring your workstation there. There's a digital workstation there if you want. There's art supplies, whatever. You probably have to fill out a thing that says, here's the project I want to work on while I'm there. And then you get that space and that time to work on it.
You're starting with Lee's mountain home, right? His rental?
Exactly. That would be the first.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah. And then business idea number 6, and the last one, is just a simple stationery company that makes cool sketchbooks, really well thought out planners, and like notepads, and just essentially making the physical, tangible paper goods that help you be creative and productive.
Yeah.
Is it called the Chaotic?
Yeah,
Company?
the super awesome sketchbook line. Is that what?
Yeah.
Super.
Oh,
I
great.
mean,
Parker
they're
and
all
I are now
doing a little bit
competing.
of, yeah, I mean, all of these things are just they're appendages of either stuff that we're doing or stuff that we are already participating in.
Yeah.
And I just want to make them a little bit more structured, a little bit more official. And that's what, if there's any investment people listening to this, let's have a talk.
All Will can think of right now is just a massive pile of $1 billion, and then the Joker standing on top of it, pouring gasoline on
Yeah.
it and flipping the match on.
How could you do that, Joker?
I'm the Joker, but instead of burning the billions, I'm like, you get an art retreat vacation.
Yeah.
You
Doesn't
get
the
an art
Joker
retreat
wanna retire?
vacation.
He just wants to live in chaos and watch the world burn, along
Yeah.
with Jake's $1 billion.
I sent that to a friend of mine. I texted that to him. His response was, I really, in all caps, hope you get rich, Jake.
Yeah, I think we all do.
All right. Should we wrap it up?
Cool.
This was good. This was good hangout time. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. 3-Point Perspective is brought to you by SVSLearn. We're becoming a great illustrator starts. And if you made it this far, please put in the comments. If you haven't already commented on what Anthony asked, which is a more prevalent sport.
Cornhole
Pickleball
or
cornhole.
pickleball?
Yeah. If you haven't done that, put a ball emoji in the in there. And if you want extra credit points, put as many $ or dollar related emojis in there as possible. That would be great. Let me go to my notes here. SVS 3-Point Perspective is produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU. Special thanks to our keeper of the curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our in-house illustrator, Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.
Reddit says there's more cornhole players than pickleball players.
I trust what Reddit says most of the time.
You know why I think that is?
It's cheaper.
You don't need a court.
Right.
Yeah. And the rules are pretty easy. Pickleball is like,
Oh yeah.
it's so, I played pickleball. I feel like every time I play pickleball, I'm like, explain the rules again.
Like, why can't I step in the kitchen again? No, I can't step in the. I can't step in.
Who serves when and
You
how do I
can, but
score?
it's conditional.
Yeah. Nothing should be conditional. You should just be able to step in the kitchen and hit the ball.
Right. Meanwhile, I'm in there making a sandwich. Yeah. Like, no, Jake, it's not that kind of kitchen.
Have you seen that
rails.
TikTok of they did 3D animation? So these guys are playing pickleball on the court, and then a guy like runs up, but his momentum carries him in the kitchen, and the other players are like, no, get out of the kitchen, and then the bottom drops out, and he falls down like 10 feet into an actual industrial kitchen where they're like all these chefs cooking, and they're like, what are you doing? And he lands on the grill and stuff.
It's that guy, Zach King, I think is his name. Yeah.
That's how you know pickleball's arrived, when Zach Keen's made a cool video.
Oh, you know the guy who did it?
I'm pretty sure I saw it, and I'm pretty sure it's Zach King. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he does all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He'll be like, check out this cool chair I drew, and then it'll all of a sudden be like a real chair or something.
Oh, yeah.
So the other day on the Chaotic Draw Along, and it didn't get chosen on the live stream, somebody suggested the prompt. So you would love these. An impossible chair. Like that was the prompt. And I put it on the list because that's we always choose 5 of the worst ideas.
Yeah.
And no one voted for impossible chair, but it's just sort of a perfect idea. The other one I really low gravity zoo was a prompt that did get chosen. But I think it's amazing. Fart powered sports also has not been chosen, but I put it on the list about 50 times. And then my final favorite one is subtle elephant. Just an elephant who's very subtle. But for whatever reason, no one wants to draw those things. Everyone's like,
you just tap into MC Escher.
Yeah, imagine.
Have you guys seen that guy who does he does magic tricks, but he does them as pranks? He comes across my Instagram. So
I think so. He's like a dad. It's always his kids or his wife or something.
no, he's not a dad, but he did this one. He did this thing where he's like, I've got this. He's at a store, at an art store, right?
I saw that one. You
Oh,
sent
did
it to
I show you
me.
that one?
You sent that
I
one
sent
to
it
me.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he draws. He does that with everything. So he draws this box. He's like, I'm going to draw this 3D box with a 3D pen, and the woman's like, the customer's like, what? A 3D pen? And he draws the box and he goes, does that look 3D to you? And she's like, not really. And then he misdirects her, gets her attention, and then he palms in an actual 3D box that's drawn like the shaky pen line,
Yeah.
and pulls it off the paper. And he's like, oh my gosh, it worked. It did work. It just took a second.
She's like, what?
And he pulled it off the paper, and it's like a little cube. And he's like, this pen is so cool. And then the pen goes into the paper as a drawing. And she's like, oh, I want to try that pen. And he's like, well, that's what it said on there, is that it'll just become like even the pen will go back into a 2D state.
Because they make the pens from other pens.
God,
I wonder how many
humans
times
are
you
so
have to do that
susceptible.
to find that woman, someone gullible.
Yeah.
You know what? He does so many of them, and he gets people so good.
Yeah,
So good.
I'll have to check out some more of them.
Will, did I tell you it was maybe a couple weeks before school ended? I was helping out in the library, and one of the first graders, every first grader got to go check out a book, and he pulled up out of nowhere a Bonaparte book, and went and checked it out. Did I tell you this story? And it was cool because I was helping the kids check out, and I was like, you don't know this, but Will is my friend. The guy who drew this book is my actual friend. And he looked at me like I was from Mars. Like he was so excited about his book, but the fact that I knew the guy who drew it did not register for him. He didn't care about it. He was so unimpressed and unenthusiastic.
I've done that.
Books aren't made by people.
Yeah. But Sullivan, who understands my world, who was with his buddy Ethan, like lost his mind over it. And but it was fun to see one of the kids pick out your book in the wild. And go check it out.
That's funny. I've done the exact same thing, and they're like, "Well, in fact, when I published my first couple of books, we'd go to like the bookstore. I'd put myself there to see if people would interact with the book, or I'd face them out, and like if someone picked it up, I'd be like, I actually drew the pictures, and they're like, get away from me, you're like,
listen here, you creepy old
and I
man.
realized like it's not the right context, and why would you even tell somebody that you did it?
Right.
Like,
do you ever? We went to Denver Comic-Con over the weekend just as fans. I didn't have a table, and we saw the guys selling your work there. Do you ever miss? Do you ever miss going to shows? And do you ever miss like the like that aspect of like when you tell people like I'm the one who made all of these. And like people do at that place when they're buying that stuff, look at you like you're a god sometimes. Like, do you ever miss that?
I don't miss the show part. I only miss the road trip with Wayne.
Yeah.
The getting out,
Yeah.
And on by Saturday, late Saturday, Sunday, I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's that whole idea of being, I don't know. I look at it as any other thing now. Doing illustration is like, people are programmers, and we don't, and like amazing programmers, and we don't go, whoa, you wrote this code that helped with this thing, like people do all kinds of good things, and we have, I think we benefit in that because it's not taught much in school. It's mysterious to most people, and they're like, I was actually working on the Bonaparte drawings on a plane one time, and this lady was behind me with her family, 2 rows of her family, and I didn't see her, but she was watching me draw. I was sitting on the aisle seat, and I was jamming because I needed to make a deadline, on that book, and that was probably one of the coolest situations, because she was like, all right, I have to ask, what are you drawing that for? And I'm like, I told her, I'm an illustrator and I do children's books, and she had the right age kids, she's like, is that going to be a book? I'm like, yeah, and it was the second one. It was Bonaparte Plays Ball. And I mean, she was so into it and got her kids into it and got my information and like, we're going to order the first book. And I don't know, it was that was cool.
Yeah.
But it was someone who saw me, and I don't know, at the comic conventions, I actually found out figured we sold better when they didn't think it was our booth.
Oh, really? When it was
Yeah,
just like, oh, wow.
Yeah, we did better, and then they once they were in the buying process, they'd be like, "Who did this?" And they always thought it was Wayne's work. They never thought it was mine, because I'm the fat plumber-looking guy with the button. You know what I mean? Like, so they always just thought, and Wayne presents better, you know, and they always thought it was
Wayne looks like an artist.
Yeah,
He's
It's
also a
true.
carny too. Like he can just talk to people.
yeah, he can.
We had a Wayne night at the dinner table the other night where they're like, I told some story. I told about how he ended up in jail, and the kids are like, "Wait, who's this guy?" And so then I was like, "Let me tell you, children, gather around." And I told Wayne stories.
You just lit a fire in the middle of your dining room.
do. His funeral is going to be amazing. The stories that are going to be told at that funeral.
So here's one. He lived like he lived where the elementary school he went to was like right across the field from his house, so he could see the comings and goings.
Mhm.
And he valued money when he was a kid so highly. Like, he wouldn't spend it on food or anything. He just wanted to accumulate money,
Mhm.
and he would buy big things, or like, I mean, he was starting businesses as a kid. He goes in the teacher's lounge one day and he sees that there's all these bottles stacked up, the returnable bottles,
Yeah.
like stacks and stacks of them. And he was the guy who was like always trying to find bottles to take back to the store to get the free money, right?
Right.
So he sees that stack and he asks the teacher, like, what do they do with those? And like, oh, every now and then one of the teachers will get sick of the whole stack being there and they'll just take them in, and then the money goes into our little teacher fund for a party or something at the end of the year. So he's like, oh, okay, so it's not like anything big and no one knows who's really doing it. So he and his friend on a regular basis for a while were climbing up the school. They'd leave a window open in the atrium in the middle courtyard, and then they'd climb over, go down, and hand all those boxes up. They had a dolly and they would just wheel them over to the store and collect all the money. And they were doing that for like 4 or 5 times until one time they got busted.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
Just imagine breaking into the school to recycle.
To recycle.
Doing everybody a favor. Might as well be compensated.
Oh, that's great.